All right. Hello, everyone. I am Jessica Mokhiber. I'm here with Jill Sheehan of Empire Charter Consultants, and we are carrying on with this series where Jill is taking stories, questions, and answering questions and reflections with colleagues and friends in the charter school movement, both in New York State and nationwide, as she is in her 27th year of chartering. And today the questions come from me. I've known Jill now for, let's see, we met in 2014, so almost 12 years,
I
which
know, it's a long time, right? Doesn't seem that long.
I know that's crazy when you
I knew
think
you before you were married.
it's true. Yes. And we worked together at the association. I was very green and new to chartering when I started as a communications director there. And then Jill and Andrea taught me so much and continue to. And as we talked about in a prior video, when they left the state association, they very graciously asked me to come with them. And it was an amazing professional decision. And also, I love them both so much.
I
So
love you too.
I've learned so much from them. And I, like I said, continue to do. So Jill, I have a couple like questions, but also do you remember when this happened? So
Okay.
I will start with this. So, like I said, I started with the association in 2014. Jill and Andrea had both been working in the charter school world for many years. I was very green. So I remember early on trying to, we were highlighting schools that were great in New York State. We were putting together like a guidebook of like best practices and best schools. And like, here's this inspiration. We have all these schools. Let's draw upon them, tell their stories and put it together with like beautiful pictures and like beautiful marketing. We needed to like be able to show what are these great schools. And this is like kind of funny, and no offense schools, but like every time I had a school in mind, I would go into Jill's office and be like, I was thinking about maybe for this booklet I'm putting together this school, but Jill would inevitably be like, that's not a good school. And I'm like, okay, are there any good schools? And like, how do you even know if there are good schools? And it was such a learning opportunity for me because a lot of times the emphasis is like the whole movement, like we defend every school and like, but that drags quality down as they taught
Sure
me.
does.
But it was so eye-opening in the beginning to hear over and over again, that's just not a good school. That's not a good school. So Jill, do you remember that? And can you talk about this phenomenon and how that is actually like a serious issue?
Okay, so you would think for somebody who's worked in the movement, I'd feel a whole lot better about some of the schools. So let's start with what do I consider a good school? I don't remember when you started. Were we still doing Elevate Charter Schools where like Bill and I were traveling all over the country
I think it was
presenting like to other
starting to,
associations? I was working in Chicago for a
it
while.
was like right around the cusp of when that was like kind of ending, I think.
Right.
But yeah.
So, so had a conversation before I started working at the association, was brawling with Bill Phillips about something. Like he worked for the association, I worked for SUNY, and we started talking about what makes a good charter school. Is it simply being good at one thing? Is it you're good academically, right? You're a high performing school, but you're out of legal compliance. Not something the association did or SUNY. The law says like you have to have certified teachers. You have no certified teachers. Your board isn't really meeting regularly and they're not posting their meetings, right? You're a compliance nightmare. Your enrollment is iffy. So, what makes a good school? Is it that you're just good at one thing? Or are you good at multiple things? And so we came up with, I don't know if you remember, it was like a circle. It says school culture and academics. Then I think it's organizational capacity, board governance, finance, community, and parent relationships. You can be good at one or two of those things, but great schools are good in all of those things. Like, oh my God, can I show you? We're going to make sure that this is in. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Hold on. So this is what we created. Can you see that?
You can. I think that's good where you're holding it up. Yeah, I can see that.
So this is what we created. This is the work that we did, and that I was told when I left the association, I could take all my Elevate Charter School stuff with me. I didn't want the name because nobody was going to hire it. So, school culture and academics, organizational leadership and governance, financial integrity and soundness, operational effectiveness and compliance, community and parent relationships. Great schools are good in all of these because everything's interconnected. If you don't have great parent relationships, your enrollment's going to drop. Therefore, it's going to affect your finances. Oh, okay. You don't want to grow organizational leadership and governance, operational effectiveness. You don't want to grow. Well, every other school in your area is K-8. You're K-5 school. What's going to happen if you don't go to K-8? You're going to lose enrollment. So we use this to show schools. And what happened is schools became good at one thing, and that's what they touted, right? We have 80% student engagement. Well, that's great because 100% of your kids can't read. So like people trade off. We're good at this, therefore we don't have to worry about this other stuff. Great schools worry about all of this because it's all interconnected. If you don't have good leadership and good board governance, how is that going to affect your school culture and academics? How is that going to affect your community and parent relationships? How do people know you in the community? What does that look like? Oh, wait, you're on your third building in 3 years and you don't have a permanent building. Is that operational effectiveness? So I would tell you, as a movement, we should not still be struggling with this, but we are. And so that is why when somebody says, what schools would you visit? There's a handful of schools. I would say to somebody, you should go visit or you should highlight them. Because sometimes I see like a really bad school post something and I just start laughing. I'm like, I hope nobody goes to that school. So it's actually true. So that is like when somebody starts in this charter school world and you go, oh, they beat but look, they're better than their district. And then we tell somebody, right, but they're supposed to beat the state average, but also you're supposed to be better than the state average. So
Right.
incrementally, conversations have lowered the bar from we should be exceeding state scores to it's okay if we're right around the failing district. And I don't know when it happened, but that's a problem. So
It taught
hope that
me a
answered
lot.
it.
Yeah, and it taught me a lot because you look at a district like Rochester and you're like, well, you're beating the district. Well, okay, but they're like 5% proficient.
So recently, a very large school is not beating the Rochester district. And it's like, shut them down. Like enough, shut
Which is
schools down. And also, we're not shutting down schools. And we should be shutting down schools because we'll go with the IBM model, cut the bottom 10%, the other 90 will rise. We should be doing that. Cut the bottom 10% every single year. Cut them. By the
so
way, sorry if I'm working with one of you.
yeah, so I thought that was like really good for me as a new person in the work. It was very helpful.
Do you know that only two people, I mean, obviously like Maddie worked for us or whatever, only you and John Sanchez, remember John
I
Sanchez? Were you
do,
there?
yeah.
Oh my God, the best. Were the only two people who requested a meeting with me to sit down and talk about the charter school movement. And because again, I was working in Albany and New York City, I used to meet with John Sanchez whenever I went. And he's like, no, I just need you to brain dump. But you were the same way, brain dump. But most people, once they start getting into the work, are like,
I needed your brain. I have another like question or reflection question from something that happened while we were at the state association. But this
okay,
one was really came to my mind when in our prior video, Melissa Melkonian asked about mission and vision if you were to open a school. Do you remember the
yes,
association retreat where you asked the entire team our entire association team to recall the organization's mission. What happened, and what do you think that says about organizations broadly? Tell the story.
They wanted a staff meeting with both states, except for it was held in Connecticut, which is fine because we were all happy not to have to be in the Albany office for a day or overnight. So Kyle calls and asks me and Andrea to present. Like, what are you to present on? Like, we're not really presenters in the in the normal capacity. So we talked about it and I said, I have it. Like, I know exactly what we can do. And there's a reason I asked this question. We need to hand out index cards. Do you remember?
Yep.
And have everyone write the mission statement. And then we're going to collect the cards. And then we're going to decide from that point on, do we go with PowerPoint A, assuming everybody understands our mission and vision, or B, hey, this is who we are, which we should never have pull out B, right? So Andrea's like, oh, whatever, we do it all the time. She goes, I think most people will know it or come close to it. We hand out the card. Remember, we had everybody separate out. So you couldn't be sitting near anyone else. Gave you a pencil and your index card. And we said, write down the mission statement of the Northeast Charter Schools Network. You wrote it. Joe wrote it. Andrea wrote it. I wrote it. Of that whole room of people, only 4 people knew the mission of the organization.
It was bad.
It was worse than even I thought it was.
It was bad.
It was literally worse than what we had anticipated. We were shocked. We were just like, we thought 2 people wouldn't get it.
Or that people would be maybe close.
So then what does your job look like if you're not mission and vision aligned? So this is our mission. All of our work is surrounding this mission. So the fact that only 4 of us, by the way, the same 4 who still work together, ironically, unironically, the only 4 people who could tell it, that included the boss who wrote down the wrong mission statement, who said, but I was close. What are you even saying to me? You know, when you just have an entire moment of like, what the hell just happened? And so that changed even how we worked with other people because we realized we had to explain why we were asking things of people. Like, this is why. Remember, Michelle couldn't answer. Michelle was in that office every single day. Like, what? Why couldn't you? What? So it taught us, one, as an organization, it made us stop and say, are we hiring in a way that's mission and vision aligned? Before somebody's hired, do we say the mission of this organization, you don't have to say mission, but right, this is what our organization does, this is why, right? Should align with the mission and vision. Even with schools, I can be talking to a school board and I'm like, this is your mission statement. And I'll say, how do you collect data on this? And everybody just looks at me. I'm like, so how do you know you're living and breathing your mission statement? It can just be a check-in every year. Like, our students are going to be productive members of society. Okay, they're K through 5. Like, I don't understand why you're right, but mentally, you actually have to take a step back and say, oh, there's a way to work around this. Let's explain what the mission and vision is. I think what happens is when one group of people feels there's one mission and the other are trying to implement the other, there's a clash of personalities and opinions. Mm-hmm. And That I would tell you was our biggest learning moment. I think even Andrea would say it's a learning moment of we have to watch how we hire in New York. People have to understand what the role of the association is and what your personal role is in the larger role of the association. And that was not done well. I hope they're doing better now, but
Do
that's
you
it.
think that that happens at schools and other organizations? And what would you say to those
It
schools and
absolutely does. It absolutely does. Um, there's really nothing you can say. You can say, this is your mission. These are, here's your mission, here's your vision, here's your key design elements. How do you live and breathe those every day? And really good schools can tell me what that looks like for them. They can tell me from leader to teacher to student to family what that experience is like. It's harder for a school that cannot tell those things. Like when you say you're college and career ready, and then you say, okay, so how many of your kids stayed in college and they don't have those numbers readily available?
Right.
Well, then you're not having the conversations at the high school level. I don't know if there's an easy way. I would say we do. I'm traveling next week again, and one of my PDs is on Saturday, and I have a slide that just says mission and then vision. And then I give them a sheet of paper. I'm like, what data have you collected on this? They have to answer that question to me. Can't wait though, because there's nothing like having a headache on a Saturday.
Okay, my last question is a bit existential. And we've been talking about this a little bit on and off in the last few weeks, but looking at the movement right now in New York State specifically, are you optimistic about the future of the charter school movement or not? If someone put a gun to your head and said you have to answer this, I mean, there's work to be done.
You know what? I'm not. And I'm not optimistic, not because of the schools. I I'm in schools. I see what these schools are doing. I see it. I'm not optimistic because of bureaucracy and politics. And I feel like politically, everyone's been asleep at the wheel while the teachers union has been building up momentum. Um, so with a gun to my head or even just a Hershey bar to my head, I would tell you that I'm not optimistic because we have one authorizer, the regents, they're just not authorizing. And then you have SUNY, who's just keeps needling the regents, thinking there's not going to be repercussions politically. Both of them have built up such a bureaucracy that takes so many people to run when the charter school world really was supposed to be about finances and data, right? And we've added all these other elements. Was it ever the intent that there would be an accountability plan that's the same for every school? Well, no, because that takes away innovation. Like, what innovative stuff are you doing that you should collect data on along with our kids learning? Or SUNY saying, or comes close to meeting 75% when the school's at 11% or 18%. Oh, but you're going to get 5 years and more kids. We took away a quality standard. So now there's what is in it for a school that is not doing well to get a 5 year renewal with even conditions to get a 5 year renewal, automatic closure. We don't know what the movement's going to be like in 5 years. If you're going to, right? We just don't know what it's going to be like. But I doubt you're going to shut a school down in 5 years. You had all the evidence to shut them down now. Add that to, we had schools, two schools, I told you about this. Last year, my year started off with an incident in Trenton that we'll never discuss, but two schools in New York that shut down, one in February, one in March. The authorizers knew they had trouble long before the school year started. Why weren't they shut down? There's nobody, and Andrea said this to me, there's nobody keeping the authorizers accountable, holding them accountable. You know that we have called for a third party to like audit the processes and procedures of both authorizers and inevitably will probably do it. Um, if we are not paying attention, one, to the actions of politicians, most important, then the authorizers, listen, if the regents don't want to give out more schools, just give SUNY all the authorizing power and shut the hell up. But then SUNY going, oh, let's renew this school 4 years early. Screw what the regents are going to kick back to us. And we just saw it with the Strive Charter School, right? And it's hilarious. Oh, we're gonna let them separate an education corporation, but that has to be approved by the regents. Great, now the regents threw it back. SUNY's gonna have to determine, well, we're just gonna override it or let it stand. But either way, there's gonna be some legal conversation that's gonna come from this. Help the movement or hurt the movement? It hurts the movement because you're flexing for something you shouldn't flex for. So am I optimistic? I will be optimistic if Joe Bellick is removed from the Committee on Charter Schools and everybody sits down at a table and says, this is why we're overriding you and not just because you can. And then equally, the regions, right? Like they're supposed to give out the CSP money. There was a lot of fluctuation. We called it out. Like, why are schools all of a sudden getting less money? They've created relationships with their school. And in all fairness, Dr. Lisa Long is trying to change those relationships. But there's such a bad taste in the mouth of region schools about all the people who were before Lisa. And you're their authorizer. And we have told schools they're not your friends. Like, stop confessing stuff to them because when they want, they're going to use that to their advantage. And so, no, I'm not optimistic, but not because of schools. I love the school. I love the schools. I love the premise of the schools. I'm not optimistic because the authorizers aren't doing their jobs.
More on that to come from you this year. We
It
know.
is. All right.
Thank you, Jill.